And since we're talking about the moon, I want to debunk a debunking video of Jordan Maxwell, which is complete lies. It's just a religious cult twisting the truth to hide their evilness. So grab your paper and your pen, because school is about to begin, and when I'm done, it will be the end.
Isis Ray L, or Israel, Israel.
That's a wonderful theory. That sounds great. I mean, it sounds well planned, and it was articulated nicely, but it's just simply not true. You see, the problem is Isis is a Greek and Coptic reconstruction of the Egyptian name Usat. Isis was not pronounced Isis in ancient Egypt. Therefore, the name Israel could not have been influenced by the name Isis in antiquity.
Now that guy has a great voice, but everything he just said is bullshit. And you're about to see why truth to the fool is lies to the wise.
Keith, that sounded wonderful, and it was articulated nicely, but it's just simply not true.
Isis is a Greek and Coptic reconstruction of the Egyptian...
Wait a minute, he's trying to fool the sheep and make them think we're talking about apples and oranges, but in fact, we're talking about oranges and oranges. Coptic simply means to copy, not invent, and that's why the word Coptic simply means Egyptian. The Coptic Egyptian language represents the Egyptian phonetic sounds, or the Egyptian hieroglyphic sounds. And remember, we're not talking about opposite sides of the world here. We're talking about the same geographical area of the world. Because everyone in the ancient Middle East were neighbors and communicated and traded. And this is why the Greeks interpreted the phonetic sounds of Egypt, because they knew it.
Isis is a Greek and Coptic reconstruction of the Egyptian name Usat.
How more wrong could you be? And what's funny, I don't even think this fool realizes that he uses another Coptic word to tease a Coptic word. Do you see an E, a U, an S, or a A, or a T here? No, because the Egyptian language was hieroglyphics. The truth is, no one knows the true Egyptian spoken language. And for Keith Thompson to say that Isis was pronounced as Usat during the Egyptian times is absolutely 100% false. First of all, the Hebrew alphabet and the Egyptian hieroglyphic alphabet has no vowels, which is a vowel to L. So basically, you can place any vowel in there next to the consonants, because they're trying to copy the phonetic sound. Keith Thompson and Ben Stanhope are what I like to call a foolologist. The 10-minute researcher who thinks he's a master. The fool who types in the word ISIS and presses search, clicks on Wikipedia where he thinks he finds the answer, where it reads the reconstructed pronunciation of the name is Usat, which is completely the wrong pronunciation. She who sat upon the throne of power, and her official recorded name means she who sat upon the throne. And this is why she has the hieroglyph of the throne upon her head, because she is crowned with the throne. And her other headdress is the U-shaped fertility horns. And by the way, genius, you don't pronounce her name Usat at all, because in the Egyptian language, the T is silent, especially when a word ends in a feminine suffix ending in T. So now I guess we know who the fool is that says Chevrolet and takes a girl to dinner and orders escargots with a little Cabernet. And the waiter doesn't want to embarrass the nerd and tell him it's pronounced escargot and Cabernet. And when the waiter brings them their escargots, they realize it's snails, and he's going to be going home alone. And that's why Egyptologists do not pronounce her name as Usat. They pronounce it without the T. SS, as in the German Eis or the English ice.
Isis was not pronounced Isis in ancient Egypt. Therefore, the name Israel could not have been influenced by the name Isis in antiquity.
Sorry, strike three. So the ancient, antique, antiquity simply means the time of the history before the Middle Ages. So let's go back in time to the Delta Nile before antiquity, to the ancient lands of Sumeria, Mesopotamia, and Canaan. And I'll even use the Hebrew Biblical Bible, where it reads, the Israelites are descendants of Aram, or Abraham, who migrated to Canaan from the Mesopotamian city of Ur. Ur was sacred to the god called Nana, which is the Sumerian moon god, or Sin, which is Akkadian. And the archaeological record indicates that the kingdoms of Israel and Judah emerged in the early Iron Age from the Canaanite culture of the late Bronze Age. So remember, Hebrew Israelites are from the city of Ur, who worshipped the moon, Sin. And Hebrew is called Yehudith, which is the language of Canaan. And where do you think the Holy Bible got its name? From the ancient city of Byblos, which is a Canaanite Phoenician city. And Byblos is the Greek name of the Phoenician city of Jebel. And this city was built by the god Cronus, Saturnel. And the Greeks imported papyrus from the Egyptians through the city of Jebel. And when the father bull or the father pope used to issue a papal bull, it was done on papyrus. So the Egyptian word for moon is Yah, or also pronounced Ayah, as in Jah, or Yah, or Hallelujah, or the Messiah. And the Bible speaks of Yahweh's house, where men stood facing the east with their backs against Yahweh. And they worshipped the sun towards the east. And the opposite of the sun in the east is the west, where the sun sets to go under the underworld. And the king of the darkness is the moon, or Sin, or Yah, or Ayah. And this is why the Hebrews worship the first god, Yahweh, the moon, just like the Muslim god, Allah, or El Yah. So now you know why they tell you it's a monotheistic religion, which means one god, or the moon god. And that's why, to this very day, our first day is Monday, or the moon's day. And the Bible says they forsook Yahweh and served Baal and Asheroth.
Isis was not pronounced Isis in ancient Egypt. Therefore, the name Israel could not have been influenced by the name Isis.
And to further prove that Israel was influenced by the goddess Isis, just take a look at the Egyptian hieroglyphic. Then take a look at the Egyptian hieroglyphic of the word Israel. And notice the female who sat next to the male. And notice that there are 3 bars underneath, representing the Trinity. So we know the Israel people lived in Canaan towards the end of the late Bronze Age. And we get the hieroglyphics of Israel from the Israel stele. And so Isis and Israel have the same Egyptian hieroglyphic of the woman and the goddess. In Egyptian, English W and Y can double as vowels U and I. And the I and the Y is also interchangeable in Hebrew. And that's why Israel can be spelled with the Y or the I. And Israel is also spelled in Hebrew with the Yod, which is the smallest letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And so now you know why the 900-year-old character Yoda in Star Wars is the smallest character, representing the smallest character of the Hebrew alphabet. And in relation to the Kab Allah, it represents the 10th Sephiro, the kingship, the point of the end and the beginning, the abyss. And that's why Yoda dies at 900, because there are only 9 numbers. 10 is really taking the 0 and the 1 and starting over, going back to the fertility of the male and the female. So when Yoda reached the age of 900, he died, only to return and be reborn at 10, or the 1. So the ninth month is September, the month of the harvest, from the Slayer god, Saturn L. And that's why the sapphire is the Saturn stone, which is September, which means 7 burn, which actually means September 11th, the 7-11, which we know as 9/11. And that's why cats have 9 lives, which is actually the 3x3 or 33 magic square, which equals 9. The number 9, as in the Beatles, number 9. And that's why the Saturnine cult, or the Supreme Cult, has 9 members. And notice there are 2 female, because in the Hebrew alphabet, only 2 of the Sifro are considered female, the rest are male. And the Yod, or the Yoda, is the only Hebrew letter that is aloft, or in the air. And that's why you see Yoda jumping and flying through the air. And that's why the Yoda can levitate. And the English language is read completely backwards from the Hebrew language, which is read from right to left. And that's why Yoda speaks backwards. Much to learn you still have, And the Hebrew Yod is the Arabic Yah. And notice the serpent S. In the Egyptian hieroglyphic alphabet, both the I and the Y are represented by the reed. And the hieroglyphic for Israel starts with the double reed, which actually is not the Y sound, but the E sound, as in the Greek or Germanic is. And when we take a look at the Egyptian U, we also see the reed. And when we pronounce the Y, we say Y. And so the Germanic Y is a variant of I, as is the Latin Y, which is pronounced as a U or an I. And of course the I is the all-seeing I, or the 9th letter of our alphabet. And that's why we dot our I, which is the title, or the dot that represents the Yoda, aloft and floating in the air. And that's why EYE spells I. And the archaeological evidence proves that the European Germanic people have been around for hundreds of thousands of years. Just take a look at a map and you'll see that they're all from the same part of the world. And that's why we have the popular Icelandic myths and fables, the ancient Celtic Druidic fables. And that's why all of our popular films today are about the ancient Germanic Druidic paganism, like Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Narnia, and The Polar Express, to name a few, coming from the ancient rituals of the Druidic order. And these Germanic pagan elders always erected the monoliths, or the megaliths. And the ancients erected these megalithic monuments all over the world, as we still do today. And to this very day, these ancient Germanic wise druids give us our word, truth. The true Drew wood of the tree, the sacred monolithic phallic tree, which gives us our logic, which is the meaning and the wisdom behind our logos, which is known as a symbol, or the icon, which means to fool the eye. And so we have the royal L lights, or the elite, which is the ancient pagan Germanic house of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. And you're not going to find a king in this elite system, because the queen is always the one with the power in paganism and witchcraft. And the goddess is the one who holds the power. She is the one who sits upon the throne, exactly like the ancient pagan rituals. Which brings us to the I rune, which is known as the Isses. And all the letters of the runic alphabet are made from the Isa Is rune, the runic principle.